I thought it was just a coincidence, but there are no coincidences. What I discovered later changed my entire vision of reality. Wait until the end. Seattle's sky, always painted in some hue of gray, felt heavier that morning. Low clouds pressing against the gleaming roof of the convention center like a lid over a boiling pot. Inside, the buzz of 1,000 overlapping conversations drowned out the occasional hum of hovering drones as they captured shots for the keynote broadcast. I moved through the crowd with the detached calm of someone who knew too much already, scanning name badges and booth logos, pretending I hadn't just watched my wife disappear behind a frosted glass door with her business partner. Lauren's laugh had always been the sound that lit up a room, sharp and untouchable, like the chime of crystal on stone. But when I caught that intimate giggle again, muted, almost swallowed, it echoed like a gunshot down the corridor of my gut. Her silhouette pressed too close to Connor's, his hand grazing her lower back in a way no colleague ever would. A soft murmur, a smirk, the way her heel lifted playfully. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a theater of mockery, and I was the dumbass usher holding the flashlight. I didn't follow them in. I didn't need to. I just stood there like a ghost on the fringe, jaw tight, heart thudding, sweat cold in my shirt despite the air conditioning. When they finally emerged, her dress slightly shifted, his tie askew, I was already back at the coffee stand, pretending to fiddle with my phone. Lauren slipped her hand into mine, fingers soft, smugness radiating from her smirk. She kissed my cheek like I was some pet husband on a leash, her lips warm and meaningless. By the time the keynote began, I wasn't hearing a word of it. I was watching her smartwatch. Not directly, of course. I'd already built the patch days ago, just a kernel extension waiting for a trigger. She never locked anything down, always assuming she was the smartest one in the room. That night in our hotel suite, while she showered off her conference charm, I opened the stream of messages, steamy photos, dirty lines, her bragging to Connor about how dull my dad energy was, how she was suffocating in beige, how I barely noticed anything and would never catch on. She laughed at me. They laughed at me. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. Instead, I watched the steam curl under the bathroom door and imagined it choking me. I opened a terminal on my laptop. No rage, no panic, just precision. I began mapping her digital life like a network breach. Her email accounts, her startup's backend, her cloud, every connection, every password she reused, every folder she thought was safe. And as the shower hissed, I planted my first exploit. Not for access, for justice. I'd been a ghost in other people's networks for years, securing them from threats they never saw. But this time, I was the threat. I had always known how to destroy quietly, how to make it look like rot from within. It wasn't enough to catch her cheating. I wanted her empire, her ego, her curated world of filtered photos and TEDx credentials to collapse like the house of cards it really was. The next morning, she sipped her latte and scrolled her phone, chuckling at some meme Connor had sent. Her eyes sparkled, amused, radiant. I almost asked her what was so funny just to see her lie, but I didn't. Instead, I suggested she take a break that evening, hit the after party with Connor, blow off some steam. She kissed my cheek again and said I was too good to her. I watched her leave in that tight red dress, the same one she wore on our 5th anniversary. That time it was just for me. This time it was for someone who sent her hotel photos labeled Room 509, no interruptions. When she was gone, I pulled the backup drive from my bag. Every message, every photo, every transaction I'd logged through her smartwatch. I printed a few, just enough for my first salvo. She wanted to play with fire. I was going to give her the whole damn inferno. But not yet. Not all at once. Revenge works best slow, measured, surgical. Not just a knife in the back, but 1,000 paper cuts that bleed out everything they thought made them powerful. Her downfall wouldn't come from a confrontation. It would come from within. By the time she came back at 2 a.m., barefoot and buzzing with wine and secrets, I was already asleep, or so she thought. Her perfume lingered like gasoline, and in my dreams, I was lighting a match. The first crack was in her smile. I'd noticed it before she did. 3 weeks later, the autumn rain came heavier. soaking the city in a chill that never quite left your bones. Our home, a modern slice of minimalism nestled in the suburbs, felt hollow, like someone had gutted it while leaving the furniture behind. Lauren moved through it like she owned every inch of air, and maybe she did, in the way predators own silence. I had kept up the mask, husband, father, partner, but behind it, I was unspooling the threads of her life one secret at a time. The bank alert was never meant for me. A misdirected notification, an error triggered when she transferred funds from what was supposed to be our daughter Emma's college savings. My name still sat quietly attached to the account, and the routing pinged my email. She had set up a separate bank profile using a Shell LLC registered in Delaware, one I hadn't known about until now. The transaction wasn't small, nearly 40 grand, routed to a private account tagged Seaside Concepts LLC, and then funneled directly to airline tickets, hotel reservations in the Maldives, and boutique shopping receipts. All of it paid for by siphoning from our daughter's future. I sat at my desk, hands clenching the edge until my knuckles went white. Emma's framed crayon drawing, a crooked stick figure family with the label "My Hero Dad," sat inches from my screen. The betrayal stung deeper than any affair. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was throwing our daughter aside like old luggage while building her fantasy life with Connor. That pain didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like war drums. She came home glowing that night, windblown from some rooftop dinner, tipsy and humming, a half-empty bottle of wine in her hand. She kissed my head like I was a dog she barely remembered adopting. I asked how her day was. She said, "Busy. So much pressure." And she poured herself another glass without meeting my eyes. The next morning, she woke to an email from the bank. Not a real one, of course. A perfect replica, routed through a spoof domain I registered the night before. It claimed her offshore account was frozen pending review for suspicious activity, warning her that transfers may be reported to federal oversight bodies. Her phone buzzed nonstop as she scrambled to text Connor, her panic bleeding into typos. I had everything rerouted to a dummy inbox. Her frantic texts were like theater scripts of guilt. "Michael might know something. What if he saw the transfer? Screw the timing. We need to go. I can't keep pretending." Then the real dagger. "I'll leave him and Emma if I have to. She's resilient. She'll bounce back. We deserve to live." That line stuck in my throat like a splinter I couldn't cough up. Emma, our little girl who still slept with a nightlight shaped like a moon, who cried during thunderstorms unless Lauren hugged her, who had begged for a telescope just so she could look at the same stars as Mommy when she traveled. Now she was disposable, a footnote in Lauren's escape plan. I didn't reply. I didn't confront. I turned that pain into motion. That same afternoon, I created a detailed financial dossier outlining Lauren and Connor's shared offshore activity. I embedded subtle markers, enough to look suspicious without outright screaming fraud. The file was signed from an anonymous whistleblower, time-stamped and encrypted, then sent to 3 board members on Connor's startup team. Investors with reputations built on discretion, control, and zero tolerance for scandal. They wouldn't act yet, but the seed was planted. That night, Emma curled into my side as we watched some nature doc about jellyfish. She didn't ask where her mom was. She just leaned her head against my chest and whispered, "You're warm." My arm tightened around her, and I kissed the top of her head, staring through the television's glow like it was a window into another life. Upstairs, Lauren's laughter drifted from the bathroom. She was FaceTiming someone, her voice soft, seductive, high on her illusions. She didn't know I'd cloned her camera access. She didn't know I'd watched the last 2 calls, seen the way she looked at Connor like he was her future. I wondered if she'd still smile like that when I was done. The next morning, she left early, heels clicking confidently toward another day of meetings and manipulation. She kissed Emma on the forehead, told her to be good, then breezed out before Emma could answer. I stood in the doorway, watching her drive off, watching her taillights disappear around the corner like a fuse burning towards something explosive. I turned back inside. My laptop was already open, my fingers already typing. Her world wasn't just going to fall apart. I was going to make sure she watched it happen piece by piece. The startup expo pulsed with artificial energy, LED-lit booths, pitch decks flashing on massive screens, and over-caffeinated founders shaking hands like politicians. I slipped into the chaos unnoticed, my fake volunteer badge clipped tight to my hoodie, a ghost among tech-obsessed dreamers. Lauren's booth was already drawing attention, a sleek setup with backlit logos and a looping video full of buzzwords. She stood at the center of it all, a polished icon in heels and confidence, her eyes scanning for investors like a hawk spotting prey. Connor was there too, leaning in too close, laughing just a bit too loud. They looked like the future, a power duo framed in light and ambition. But they didn't know I'd rewritten that future the night before, replacing the clean, investor-friendly numbers in their keynote presentation with a nightmare of doctored data. Slide 14, burned into my memory, showed plummeting cash flow, unpaid taxes, and a suspicious retainer traced to Connor's private consultancy. Their pitch began at noon, in a sleek glass conference room. I watched from the back row, head low. Lauren's voice filled the space, confident, rehearsed, flawless, until it wasn't. One click, and the slide turned their dreams to ash. Confused murmurs spread. Investors frowned. Phones rose to capture screenshots. When she realized what was on screen, Lauren froze. Her eyes snapped toward Connor like he'd just stabbed her. The second slide, meant to bury any doubt, featured a forged internal audit. Unethical practices flagged. Independent investigation pending. The text scrolled across the screen in sterile gray. Connor stepped forward to salvage things, but she turned on him in front of everyone, her voice cutting through the room, sharp and livid. Their startup's perfect illusion shattered in seconds. I slipped away before the Q&A began. On the far side of the expo, I found Emma's school group weaving through robotics demos. She spotted me, bolted into my arms, and started excitedly rambling about electric cars and VR dragons. For a moment, I could almost forget the fire I'd lit. She held my hand, proud to have her dad there, completely unaware her mother's world was collapsing just a few booths away. Then came the shouting. Lauren's voice, piercing, angry, ripped across the floor. She was tearing into her staff, blaming everyone but herself. I kept Emma facing away, leading her toward the hallway. But she heard it. She heard everything. "Why is Mommy so mad?" she asked, voice soft. "She's just upset about her work," I lied. "It's nothing you did." But Emma wasn't convinced. She kept glancing back, watching her mother unravel. Security moved in eventually, but by then, half the expo had their phones out, filming Lauren's meltdown as her team stood frozen under the weight of her fury. Her polished image had cracked, and she didn't even see how deep the fracture ran. On the drive home, Emma was quiet. She didn't ask any more questions. She just held my hand, her small fingers wrapped around mine like a promise. That night, curled beside me with her stuffed rabbit under her chin, she whispered, "Don't leave me, okay?" I kissed her hair. Never. Because now I wasn't just dismantling Lauren's world for revenge. I was tearing it down to build something safer for our daughter. And I wasn't close to finished. The cabin on the Puget Sound had always been more than a piece of property. It was memory. It was mornings with Emma on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching fog curl across the water. It was fishing lines in the shallows, marshmallows burnt over crackling pine wood, and the faint echo of my father's voice telling old stories that lived only in that place. So when I saw the digital deed transfer buried in Lauren's encrypted folders, my signature forged, the cabin sold off to fund some high-rise condo in Miami, I didn't just see theft. I saw erasure. She'd taken something sacred and sold it like it was another startup asset. No permission, no mention, just a cold transaction filed in the shadow of our marriage. I stared at the document for hours, my heart swinging between rage and disbelief, tracing the strokes of my fake signature like I was looking at a crime scene. And it was a crime. She just didn't know the kind of punishment I'd make out of it yet. I made the calls quietly, found a photographer through a friend who worked real estate staging, booked a buyer's tour for the following Saturday, and leaked the listing to Lauren through an anonymous tip email saying there was some confusion about who owned the cabin now. I knew that would get her attention. She'd buried the sale deep, too deep to risk someone pulling it into daylight. She took the bait. When she arrived, heels clicking over the gravel drive, she was already fuming. The rented car hadn't even shut off before she slammed the door and stormed toward the porch, muttering to herself about idiots and screw-ups. The photographer, hidden behind a tree line with a long lens, clicked silently as Lauren unleashed a vicious tirade, cursing the supposed realtor, demanding to know why her private asset was being showcased. But the moment that sealed it wasn't the fury. It was what she said when she thought no one was listening. If we want that Miami view, we cut the dead weight. Emma doesn't need this place. She doesn't even remember half these weekends. I felt it like a slap across my soul. She'd sold off our daughter's memories for palm trees and oceanfront cocktails with Connor. I clenched my jaw so tight I thought I'd crack a molar. But I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just let the camera catch every word. That night, I packaged the photos and dropped them in an anonymous email to Connor's wife, along with a few carefully chosen screenshots of Lauren's more colorful messages. Not the sexual ones, not yet. Just enough to fracture trust, enough to turn a partnership into suspicion, and it worked. By Monday, Lauren's messages to Connor changed tone. Short, clipped, panicked. She asked if he'd talked to Amanda, if she'd seen anything. Connor didn't reply for nearly 12 hours. When he did, it was a single sentence. We need to talk. Now. The next few days, Lauren unraveled by inches. She stopped checking in with Emma before school. She missed a PTA conference she'd promised to attend. I covered for her, like I always had. But now I was taking mental notes on every crack in her composure. She was starting to feel hunted, and I wanted that weight to settle heavy on her shoulders. Emma, meanwhile, clung to our routines like they were lifelines. She wanted pancakes every morning, even when I was running late. She wanted to stay up to watch a meteor shower on the weekend, and I let her, even though I had surveillance scripts running on 3 devices at once. Her laughter was the only thing keeping my hands from shaking when I logged into Lauren's email and read the latest desperate plea to Connor. Please don't blow this up. We're so close. They weren't close. They were circling the drain. And I was making sure the current only got stronger. The gala was supposed to be Lauren's crown jewel, a celebration of women in innovation, hosted at a glittering rooftop venue in downtown Seattle, filled with angel investors, tech journalists, and the kind of influencers who treated champagne like currency. She'd spent weeks perfecting her speech, rehearsing in front of mirrors, practicing the pauses that would make the room lean in just before she delivered her next line of fabricated inspiration. She didn't know I'd been rewriting the story behind her curtain. The plan took precision. I used a series of dummy accounts, fake employees tied to her company, each sending timed emails to the board. Emails containing doctored correspondence suggesting Lauren had funneled investor funds into private luxury purchases. A Birkin bag here, a yacht deposit there, all traced to an executive retreat budget that didn't exist. The numbers were just real enough to plant doubt. And by the time the gala began, 3 board members were already on edge. The venue was stunning, draped in deep blue lights and soft jazz, a skyline view behind the glass that looked like it belonged in a dream. Lauren stepped onto the stage in a silver dress that shimmered with every step, her hair perfect, her smile weaponized. Emma stood beside me near the back, fidgeting in her little dress, nervous but proud to see her mom getting an award. I told her we'd get ice cream after. I said nothing about what was coming. Lauren launched into her speech with confidence, her voice smooth as silk. She spoke about resilience, about building something out of nothing, about the sacrifices women make to lead in tech. Her voice barely cracked until one of the board members stood. No warning, just rose from his seat mid-sentence, holding his phone like a warrant. "Lauren," he said flatly, "care to explain this email?" The music stopped. The room tilted. She blinked, faltered, then tried to laugh it off. But another board member followed, then another. A cluster of voices grew around the stage. Questions, demands. Whispers turned into confrontation. Emma looked up at me, confused. "Why are they yelling?" I knelt beside her, shielding her from the unfolding chaos, heart pounding. "It's okay, sweetheart. Sometimes adults have to sort out big things." On stage, Lauren tried to salvage the moment, snapping at her team when one hesitated to back her up. She called the emails fake, called it a coordinated smear, but her tone was brittle now, desperation leaking through. She scanned the room, maybe looking for Connor. He wasn't there. I'd made sure of that. He'd ghosted her after the cabin photos and messages reached his wife. The thread between them had snapped. Now she was alone, in a spotlight that only exposed the cracks. Then came the final blow. As she stumbled off stage, her phone buzzed, an alert I'd timed to hit at the peak of her humiliation. A fake audit notice from the IRS, designed down to the pixel, claiming they were launching a preliminary inquiry into her business finances. She saw it and froze. For a second, she looked like a statue sculpted in panic. Emma tugged at my sleeve, whispering, "Mommy looks scared." I picked her up gently, whispering, "She'll be okay." But we both knew it was a lie. That night, after I tucked Emma into bed, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the last untouched bottle of wine Lauren had brought back from Napa. The label was a brag from her last girls' trip, another lie wrapped in cork and glass. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The message had been delivered. Her image was shattered, her allies scattering. I had only a few more pieces left to place, and she still had no idea how close the end really was. The neighborhood block party was Lauren's idea, originally. Every year she played hostess with the polished charm of a politician, turning our front lawn into a curated little magazine spread. Fairy lights, wine barrels, a jazz trio tucked under a tent. This year, though, the party happened without her fingerprints. She was still spiraling, barely keeping her company afloat, her nights full of frantic calls I no longer pretended not to hear. Still, she showed up that evening, dressed in her curated, "I'm still thriving" outfit, all white linen and forced confidence, pretending nothing had cracked beneath her heels. She didn't know the crack was about to split open in front of everyone. Neighbors wandered over with their folding chairs and wine glasses, kids darting between sprinklers and chalk drawings. Emma sat beside me on the curb, swinging her legs and licking ice cream from her fingers, her laughter a fragile shield between two worlds. Lauren stayed near the wine table, holding court like old times, her fake laugh louder than necessary. She didn't see the tow truck turn the corner until it was halfway up the street. The driver climbed out slowly, clipboard in hand, not rushed, not hiding. He approached the driveway with the precision of someone paid not to ask questions. The tow cable clanked against the pavement as he lowered it to the ground, heading straight for the centerpiece of Lauren's ego, the vintage Corvette, a cherry red '66 Stingray, gifted to her by Connor after their first big investment round. She always parked it at an angle, like it belonged in a gallery. When she noticed, it was too late. The truck was already locking the hooks onto the undercarriage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she snapped, striding across the lawn, the entire block turning to watch. "Repossession order, ma'am," the driver replied coolly. "Vehicle's been flagged for defaulted payments." The look on her face was pure theater. Confusion, denial, then rage in rapid succession. "That's impossible. This car is paid off. You've got the wrong—" She cut herself short. She looked at me then, her eyes narrowing as if sensing I was somehow part of this. I stayed seated on the curb, Emma still beside me, pretending to sip from a juice pouch while watching the show unfold. Lauren lost it. She shoved the driver's clipboard to the ground. When a neighbor stepped in to calm her down, she screamed at him, red-faced, wild-eyed, and shoved him hard enough that he stumbled into the grass, knocking over a table of cupcakes. Her fury, once the stuff of private conversations and locked office doors, spilled into the street like gasoline. Emma's smile vanished. She dropped her juice and stood, eyes wide. "She's yelling again," she whispered, her small voice cracking. I knelt beside her. "You're okay. You're safe. Come here." She collapsed into my chest, tears already coming, hiding her face as the tow truck began pulling away with Lauren still screaming behind it. Neighbors exchanged stunned glances. The charm was gone. All that remained was the storm. I let the moment sit. Let them all see her not as the visionary leader or loving mother, but as the brittle, volatile stranger I'd uncovered piece by piece. Later that night, once Emma was asleep, I slipped out to the patio and made one last call, an anonymous tip to a local officer I knew from a security seminar. I gave him a name, a behavior pattern, and a quiet nudge about possible forged documents related to property transfers. I didn't ask for a raid, just attention, enough for her world to feel smaller, tighter, and closing in. Inside, Lauren was pacing the kitchen, phone to her ear, hissing into it like a snake underwater. She didn't know her usual moves weren't working. Her lawyers were dodging her. Connor had gone radio silent. The board was scheduling emergency meetings without her. I stepped into the doorway just long enough to catch her eyes. No words, just a look. And for the first time, she didn't have a glare waiting. Just a flicker of something she never used to show me. Fear. She turned away first, because even she could feel it now, that this wasn't just misfortune or sabotage. This was something designed, a dismantling, and the final piece was already on its way. Emma's birthday fell on a clear Saturday, the kind of rare spring day in Seattle that made the whole world feel like it was holding its breath. She turned 11, still young enough to cling to stuffed animals, old enough to notice when something was wrong. I'd planned a simple party, just friends from her class, some games in the backyard, a cake with her favorite cartoon fox and icing. No frills, just something safe, something good. Something that couldn't be ripped apart by the chaos Lauren had become. Lauren had insisted on being there, despite everything. Despite her job crumbling, her car gone, her finances locked in a hurricane of audits and investor suspicions. She needed the performance, one last chance to appear like a mother in control. She showed up late, flowers in one hand, that same strained smile on her face. Emma hugged her, but it was short, unsure. There was a gap between them now, something invisible but heavy. I watched from the porch, arms crossed. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The party moved on. Balloons tied to chairs, paper crowns, a backyard piñata swaying under the maple tree. Laughter bounced off the fence. For a few hours, Emma was just a kid again, but the last piece was already moving. I'd submitted the forged signature evidence through an anonymous legal intake a week earlier, the scanned deed of the cabin, with metadata intact. The wheels had turned slower than I wanted, but I had faith in paper trails. And the detective assigned to the case, sharp, methodical, respectful, had taken the bait without realizing it was bait. They didn't know I'd planned for it to hit on this exact day. The sirens came quiet at first, just a pulsing hum rolling down the cul-de-sac. Lauren didn't notice until the first squad car pulled up to the curb, lights flashing. Kids froze mid-tag. Parents stepped back from the patio. One officer stepped out, hand already resting on his belt. The other walked straight toward the porch. "Lauren Hayes?" he asked, calm but clear. She looked confused, then terrified. Her eyes darted toward me. I gave her nothing. Not a flinch, not a breath. "You're being placed under arrest for suspected property fraud and forgery. Please step forward." Her voice cracked. "Wait, no, this is a mistake. You don't understand. He did this." She jabbed a finger toward me, voice climbing into a shriek. "He's setting me up. He ruined everything." Emma stood at the porch railing, clutching the ribbon of her birthday balloon, the string trembling in her fingers. "Why is Mommy going with the police?" she whispered, barely audible. Lauren fought. She cursed. She struggled in the cuffs as they pulled her away. She screamed that I was behind it, that I'd destroyed her life. But by then, no one was listening. Some parents covered their kids' ears. Others watched in silence, the kind of silence that feels final. I knelt beside Emma and opened my arms. She dropped the balloon and ran into me, sobbing quietly against my chest as the squad car door slammed shut. Lauren kicked once against the window, wild and broken, before the car pulled away, red and blue lights dancing off every corner of the street. We stayed there like that for a long time, her tears soaking through my shirt, my hand running over her hair in slow, steady circles. Later that night, with the house quiet and the party gone, I sat on Emma's bed as she drifted to sleep, curled around her stuffed rabbit, breathing even and soft. I hadn't told her everything. I never would. She didn't need to carry that weight. Not now. Maybe not ever. I just needed her to know she was safe. I stepped outside when she was asleep, onto the deck that faced the stars. The wind tugged gently at the trees. Somewhere far off, an owl called out, and I just stood there for a long time, looking up at the same night sky Emma used to trace with her telescope. Everything Lauren had built was gone. The company, the car, the condo, her credibility, her freedom, burned down one piece at a time with surgical precision, and she never once saw the fire starter coming. She thought she could rewrite the rules, escape the weight of loyalty, of family. She thought she could take what she wanted and vanish into a fantasy without consequence. But the past always leaves a trail, and I followed it like a hunter through snow. She wanted freedom. I gave her isolation. She wanted control. I gave her collapse. And now, with Emma's soft breath echoing through the hall and the stars overhead blinking silently, I could finally breathe again. The war was over, and I had won. Had. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.